Hey everybody, it's Charles from HumbleMechanic.com today, taking your questions on installing LEDs, engine vacuum, wheel bearing issues, and more. This is episode 231 of the Humble Mechanic Podcast. If you want to get a question on a show like this, email me, Charles, at HumbleMechanic.com, and put question for Charles in the subject. And if you don't see your question on a show like this, check out the quick videos playlist on YouTube where I do one question per video. And if you'd rather just listen, there are audio-only versions of these shows on iTunes, Google, Stitcher, or at HumbleMechanic.com. All right, let's talk about the sponsor of the day, which is CRP Automotive. CRP deals in a ton of OE maintenance and repair parts, timing belt kits, suspension components, and even fluids. So check them out at crpautomotive.com. And real quick, if you want exclusive content from me, as well, and more importantly, discounts to places like Black Forest, Eastwood, MT Knives, Sonic Tools, Eurowise, S&P Automotive, Kerma TDI, USP Motorsports, and a whole bunch more, check out the Crew Membership Program. Awesome way to support the show, but more importantly, awesome way to score yourself some really killer discounts on stuff you're probably buying anyway. As always, links are down in the description. All right, we're wrapped up there. Let's hit these questions. First one up is from Will. Have you ever upgraded your lights to LEDs, especially the turn signals? I would like to do this myself, but hyper flashing and adding resistors are not my thing. Is the hazard flasher the same as the turn signal flasher? If not, can I get an electronic flasher relay that does not use resistors at the LED bulb locations? Where is the turn signal relay located? Thanks in advance, and here is my car. Will, awesome R32. As you guys know, that car has a special place in my heart. This is actually a super easy question, man. So turn signal relay, hazard relay, it's the same component. It is the hazard button located in the dash just above where the radio is. In fact, if you want to see more about that, I did a video on adding comfort turn signals where you tap the stalk and it flashes 3 times. So you can check that video out. I'll link it down in the description. That is the control unit for the turn signals. When it comes to replacing your old school incandescent bulbs with LEDs, there's a handful of ways you can do it. You can jab the LEDs in there and have them flash really fast. Not cool. I wouldn't want it. And of course, Will doesn't want it. You can add your own resistors, and that works really well, but it's one more step that you have to do. Well, if I were going to do this, I would very simply pay a little bit more money and get the LEDs that have the resistors built into them. There are LED bulbs that have the circuitry in it already to change the resistance values so that you don't have to deal with a really flash fast of a turn signal or a brake or a light warning out indicator, maybe on some newer cars that have the light out indicator warning. Will's R32 doesn't have that, but if you have a newer car, VW or otherwise, you may have that. The newer ones are also pulse width modulated. They're not just on off, which having a bulb with different resistance values can tweak that out a little. That's actually why the light out warning comes on. So Will, super easy question, man. Pay a couple extra bucks, get the ones that have the resistors in them. You may find that they're labeled as bulb monitoring friendly or something like that, but do that, man. That way you don't have to worry about any of the rest of this stuff. For those of you guys that like to do that kind of thing, add in resistors or whatever, I think that's awesome. That's a great way to go. But for a lot of DIYers, it's either outside their skill set or they don't have the equipment, soldering iron or whatever, or they just don't simply want to do it and would rather pay $1 or $2 extra for the bulb, drop it right in, and have cool LED turn signals or brake lights or tail lights or whatever light they're replacing. My car, my R32 is got LEDs in the front bumper marker lights. That's the only ones that it has, but that may change in the future. So there you go, Will. Great question with a very simple answer. Next one up is from Henry. Hey, Charles, I would like to know if the PCV system on my 2012 GTI should have vacuum when the oil cap is removed. It appears to have positive pressure when it is removed with the engine at idle. I just recently purchased this GTI and it's burning a quart of oil every 300 to 600 miles. Is there a warranty extension for excessive oil consumption? Thank you, Henry. Okay, Henry, on the warranty extension, there is nothing specific that says if your car has excessive oil consumption, we have an extended warranty for that. Okay, when you're dealing with warranty and oil consumption, really when you're dealing with oil consumption anyway, the VW approach to it is as follows. we do an oil change, right? So fresh, clean oil, fresh filter. When we put the oil in the car, we actually weigh how much we put in. How much we put in doesn't really matter, but VW does have a specification that they want added to the engine. I want to say it's 3,300 grams, plus or minus 100 grams, something like that. So we're actually weighing the amount of oil that we're putting into it, and we're documenting that. That 3,300 grams, by the way, is not including changing the filter. So if you're putting a filter in, you need to put a little bit more oil in it. Again, that spec number doesn't matter. We just have to document how much we put in. Then we release the vehicle to the customer, say drive 500 miles. Then we have them come back. We have a process for draining the oil. So vehicle up to temp. This is all done through the scan tool. So vehicle up to temp. We remove the drain plug and drain it for 10 minutes. And then we weigh that amount that had come out. We input the amount we weighed. We input the amount that we weighed the first time. Then we put in how many miles, and it does a little magical calculation, and it determines the amount of consumption. Based on the information of the scan tool, this determines our next steps. Either it's good, and we don't do anything, or it's not good, and we take the next steps. Typically, the next steps would be measuring engine vacuum at the dipstick, or some other method, right? Something else, a manometer, something like that. Typically, when it got to that point, we were calling VW and opening up a case so that we had even further documentation. On the VW side, oil consumption wasn't nearly the issue that it was on the Audi side. On the Audi side, you'd see severe oil consumption where the car wouldn't even make it 600 miles before you were having to add oil. So not nearly as big of a problem. On what it really was is it's the transverse engines, the engines that are across the bay, versus the longitudinal engines, which are the ones that are front to back. So like your A4, for example, which is longitudinal, had more issues than your A3, which was transverse. So while there's no specific warranty for that, there is powertrain warranty, and there may be a case that you can make to VW for excessive consumption and get something covered, but that is 100% case-by-case basis, and it would require you making a phone call to VW to ask for some kind of assistance. It really depended whether they would help anybody or not. There was no like blanket format for that, so it really would depend. You'd really have to take it to the dealership, have them diagnose it, and then you could go from there with requesting assistance from VW. Now, when it comes to engine vacuum or pressure at idle, if you take that oil cap and twist it and just let it sit, it'll bounce, right? It'll bounce up and down and jiggle around while the vehicle is at idle. So there is a little bit of positive pressure. If you twist that and you try and pull it up and you can't, like the engine sucking it down, that's a problem. That's a common sign of a PCV failure. In fact, that's what we would do to diagnose PCV failures oftentimes. We just twist the cap and it wouldn't bounce and rattle. It would just simply stick there, and you could, if you worked hard enough, but you would really struggle to lift that cap off the cam bridge. So it sounds like you're probably okay in the PCV department. What you really need to do first, right? So whenever I got a car with oil consumption, my first step before I did anything was, of course, check the oil level. Next, rather than worry about consumption, I'm focusing on leaks, because this is something that I can see, right? I can see it right away. I take my flashlight and shine it up there or down there, and I'm looking for any evidence of oil, standing oil. If you're losing, what did you say, 300 to 600 miles, you're losing about a quart. If it's leaking, you're gonna see it. If it's consuming, well, now we have to take a different approach. That level of oil consumption is a lot. And typically what I also found, so let's pretend we don't have any leaks, but you do want to check that rear main seal, front timing cover, upper front timing cover, lower, vacuum pump, cam bridge. All that are really high problem, high leak areas. And drain plug. You said you just bought it, so make sure it's not leaking from the drain plug. Again, that's a lot of oil to lose out of the engine from a leak. If we're consuming it, well, now we take a different approach. We do things like compression, and we check engine vacuum. Maybe worth putting a PCV on it just to check. Take a look at the intake, the pressure side of the turbo, and see if maybe your intercooler is full of engine oil. Maybe it's a turbocharger issue. and it's pumping oil past the seal and through the engine and then out the exhaust. What we also oftentimes found is that the level of oil someone said it was consuming rarely matched what it actually was, at least in the window of time that we were talking about. So that whole oil consumption test that I just mentioned, if a customer said, I'm losing 1.5 quarts, right, we would take that into account because we want to duplicate that scenario, but then we would find it was maybe 0.3 quarts, way less than people were saying. And of course, this should go without saying, make sure you're checking your oil correctly, level surface, warm engine, let the engine sit for a couple minutes after shutting it off, and check your dipstick. Make sure your dipstick's not broken. That's another, not so common on this one, but with a plastic dipstick, you never know, that could be an issue. So before you jump into the consumption camp, check all those other things first. Odds are you'll probably find the issue before you get to actually checking consumption, but before you start going internal engine, let's look at everything else first. And on the warranty extension, the powertrain does have a 5-year 60K warranty. You're in 2012. The odds of it still being in that 5 years are very, very slim since we're in 2018. Model year 19 is already out. So you might be SOL on that one, but with these kind of issues, I always recommend get it diagnosed properly and then give VW a call. They may say go pound sand, but you never know. They might help you out. I've seen a lot of people get assistance from VW on issues like this. So give them a call. It's worth 10 minutes of your time to get something either assisted or completely paid for, or at least you'll know whether they want to help you or not. All right, next one up is from Brett. Hey Charles, I have a 2013 CC with 72K. I have the following warning lights on. It's pretty much all of them. Traction control, ABS, parking brake, adaptive front lighting system, and airbag. Brett's Christmas tree is really lit up. All of the wheel bearings were damaged in an accident. The insurance company won't honor the claim as they're expendable parts. That's a whole other can of worms, though. Yeah, that sounds dumb to me, Brett. My question, would changing all the wheel bearings fix these lights, assuming the ABS sensor in the hub is damaged, or should I be looking towards the ABS sensor itself or something completely different? Thank you, Brett. Okay, Brett, impossible to know 100% for sure, right? If you sent me that fault log and I could actually look at each individual fault, I might be able to better help you. But I think I can shed some light on the situation anyway. So if our wheel bearings were damaged in an accident, all four, dude, I don't know what kind of accident it is, but that's pretty bad. I hope nobody got hurt. So we have 4 bad wheel bearings, right? The odds of all 4 being bad, I think is pretty slim, but it could totally happen. So we're talking about interconnected systems in the car, right? We have a 13cc, this is a CAN bus car, all the computers talk to each other, which means they all have a say in what goes on. So we can't monitor wheel speed. What does that mean? Well, since we can't monitor wheel speed, we don't know whether a wheel is turning faster than another one, so we don't have traction control. We can't monitor wheel speed, so our parking brake may work, but it may not. How's it going to deactivate when our car gets over a few miles per hour? Or not activate, or I should say activate in a different way if we're going 40 miles an hour and just pull the button up or push the button down in order to try and activate or deactivate the brake. It doesn't know how fast the wheels are turning, so it's not going to function properly. Anytime something is unhappy with traction control or wheel speed, you may get an AFS light, or you might just have an AFS light out. That's a really commonly failing bulb. And then why would our airbag light be on? Well, these systems are all interconnected. So your airbag light being on doesn't surprise me at all. In fact, oftentimes on the more modern VWs, so this model year 13 and up, or roughly about that, to have an ABS light on and an airbag light on at the same time, really common. If your vehicle doesn't know where a wheel is as far as rotation, it's going to be upset. It's going to eliminate a lot of features of the vehicle. If you had any kind of driver assist systems, adaptive cruise, or lane departure warning, none of that stuff would work either. It is completely reasonable to me that 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 wheel bearings could be bad in this car, right? It's a common failing part. They really don't like impact. They really don't. So to have one damage from an accident is totally reasonable, but you almost always get faults for each individual wheel. If you brought this car to me, the first thing I would do is I would plug my scan tool in. I would drive it, see if I had any noise. Then I would plug my scan tool in and I'd read fault codes, right? The vehicle's giving you all this information. It's foolish not to utilize it. Then what I would do is I would either put the car up in the air and spin the wheels and see what my reading was in the measured value blocks. Or with VAGCOM, what I'd probably do is I would get the graph feature up in VAGCOM and I would drive the car so that I could watch all 4 wheel speeds together and graph them, and you can see it change as you speed up, slow down, turn left, turn right. You see what happens when all the wheels are turning. Of course, when you turn, your wheels on the inside versus the outside are turning at a different speed, so you want to take that into account. But if you drive in a straight line, you should be able to see all 4 of those wheels turning at about the same speed. If you don't see that, or you see one not registering at all, or 2 or 3 or 4, you know you got a problem. Inspect your wiring. Make sure we don't have any broken wiring. Inspect where your ABS module is, because maybe it's a module problem, not a wheel speed problem, or not a wheel bearing problem, which the bearing has the wheel speed sensor in it. Your TPMS light is probably on as well, if you didn't mention that one, but I'm guessing your tire pressure monitor light's probably on too. That one gets really upset when anything like this happens. So you gotta get it diagnosed before the insurance company is gonna pay for anything. And that's just how insurance companies work. It's a pain in the butt. You have to take your car somewhere that is used to working with insurance companies, be it body shop, dealership, independent shop, because it's a different conversation that I'm gonna have with an insurance adjuster than I'm gonna have with a customer, than I'm gonna have with the warranty company. All of those things are different. The warranty company and insurance company are very similar, but even still, there's some nuance to having those two conversations that a trained and skilled tech, advisor, manager should know and can articulate that really, really well and be on your side, because you're looking for your advocate here. So, man, you need to get it properly diagnosed and then take it to the insurance company and say, hey, these are bad. I didn't have this problem before. It's related to the accident. Let's get them fixed and move forward. And you may have just those issues with the wheel speed sensors, wheel bearings. You may have more going on. Got to get it diagnosed properly, and I hope that you can get your insurance company to cover it. Push them really hard, man. Don't give up on the first no. Push them hard, get it fixed, and get your butt back in your car. All right, last one of the day comes from Jesse. On my 14 Passat 1.8 Turbo, when I drift into a corner at high speed, not drifting per se, just taking a corner at high speed, I get random misfires and the car goes into limp mode because of the PO300, which is a random multiple misfire. The first time it happened, I replaced the spark plugs and ignition coils and made sure to gap them appropriately for the boost pressure of the tune on the car. Shortly after that, it happened again, exact same turn. I don't think it could be because of the spark plugs and coil packs, given that I just barely changed them out. What else could be causing the problem? It happens in those high-speed cornering situations. Okay, Jesse, I have seen this happen like 3 other times, so it's not ultra common, and it always seemed to depend on which way you were turning. Given that it's happening in the same turn, obviously you're probably turning the same direction, and it unfortunately ended up being an engine issue. Okay, before we get into an engine issue, we need to check the basics, and Jesse, you did that. Coils, plugs, good quality fuel. Pay attention to your fuel level, because maybe in this curve, maybe it's a long curve, high speed, high body roll, fuel sloshing to one side. Maybe you're causing like a blip starvation in the high pressure side. I doubt that. There should be enough fuel to carry you through that turn between the line, between the tank, or excuse me, between the pump in the tank, between the lines up to the high pressure pump in the rail. There should be enough fuel there, but you may be going through a good amount of fuel. So that's something you want to pay attention to. Is this a low fuel concern, right? We're at 1/8 of a tank, or do we have a full tank and it's happening too? I would trial that myself before I brought the car in, because then at least you can give the tech more information. The thing that I've seen cause this, and it wasn't just misfires that happened, it was misfires. It was also timing faults that occurred. some kind of cam crank correlation or over advanced fault. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was a timing related fault. What was actually happening was the crankshaft was moving in and out. So you're in that high aggressive turn at high speed, and what was happening is the crankshaft was walking in and out, and that was upsetting the engine, that was upsetting timing. It's crazy that that was happening, because that's never really been a VW issue, at least not in my experience. So you have the crankshaft walking. We kind of stumbled across this. I want to say the car had got chains and plugs, wires, right? Plugs, coils, the whole deal like you've done, grounds cleaned. Battery connection is another one you want to double check. Make sure your battery's bolted down and the connections are tight. So we stumbled across it sort of, and I'll never forget Josh setting up the car to do a proper crankshaft end play test. So he mounted up the dial indicator and preloaded it and got it all set up, did a great job, set it up perfectly, and then takes his pry bar, and you could just watch as he pried back and forth on the crankshaft. You didn't even need an indicator. It was moving so much. I mean, just looking up and watching it, you could see that crank pulley move as he pried it in and out. And you shouldn't see that, right? A little tiny bit of movement, okay. But this was like, you could measure it on your finger. It was a lot of movement. So that car ended up getting an engine. I want to say when we pulled the pan down, he found the thrust bearing laying in the oil pan or in the cam or in the crankshaft girdle, but there was no noise. There was no other symptoms. It was just around turns, or sometimes the customer would get a check engine light. It would kick into limp mode. I've also heard of this on manual transmission cars with like aggressive acceleration or aggressive shifting, because you're causing so much disturbance in the powertrain that it would actually make the crankshaft walk as well. I hope that is not what your problem is. Unless you're under warranty, then like good for you, right? Suck for the tech that's got to do the engine repair under warranty. But great for you, because you'll get a whole new engine most likely. I want to say that's probably not a repair that would be made. That would just go ahead and put an engine in. Something like that should be covered under powertrain warranty. It's case by case. Of course, as always with everything under warranty, there is no definitive statement of yes, it's covered. It's subjective to the people working on the car. So keep that in mind. And yeah, I would take it in and get it looked at. If you're under 60K, should still be under powertrain warranty. If you're over that, you're out. Another case where this may be worth a phone call to VW on getting some assistance on that. They may or may not help you. Of course, I don't know. Always, always, always worth picking up the old phone, giving them a call, and trying to get some help on it. So I hope that's what it is if you're under warranty. If it's not, honestly, that's the only thing I've ever seen cause this. Maybe something really dumb, like the connector's not plugged in all the way, or a loose ground for the ECM. All of those things are possible. But do that fuel testing. That's a really easy test to do. And maybe you can eliminate something kind of easy with that being a problem instead of something severe like internal engine failure. All right, guys, wrap it up there. Questions, comments, go down below if you like the video. Hit that thumbs up button. Always appreciate that. Don't forget to subscribe and ding the notification bell. You can also follow me on all the social media dealios, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and of course, Snapchat. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Keep the questions coming, and I will see you next time.